This week, I want to talk about totalitarianism, which is something we don't talk about often enough. We use and often hear terms like fascism, authoritarianism, disinformation, propaganda. Totalitarianism is a little different, and I think gives us a useful framework for understanding what's happening in the Republican Party. Last Sunday, I talked about the radicalization of the Republican Party, and I talked about different factors contributing to the radicalization. The Sunday before, I talked about fascist lies. Both of those are relevant to this discussion of totalitarianism. Now, the latest chapter in the saga of the radicalization of the Republican Party centers on Liz Cheney, the Republican representative from Wyoming, and yes, the daughter of former Vice President Dick Cheney. She's refusing to go along with Trump's lie that he won the election. She's been a bit out of step for a while, and it's gotten her into trouble before. In January, after she voted to impeach Trump, the Trump loyalists in the House tried to remove her from her leadership position as conference chairperson. That vote was done with secret ballots. When the votes were counted, enough of the Republicans voted in her favor, so she survived. Now she's in trouble again. Trump evidently wants her removed from her leadership position, and he apparently still controls enough Republican members of Congress, so they're bringing the matter to a vote again. So Cheney wrote in an op-ed last week for the Washington Post, and she presented the situation as a turning point for the Republican Party. She said, if the party continues to embrace this lie, the party will unmoor itself from truth and the Constitution. The vote will probably be next week, and it looks like it will probably be a secret ballot again. This, of course, has everyone wondering, will she be removed? Is this really a turning point for the Republican Party? I suggest that if the ballot is secret, there won't be any turning point. The Republican Party will continue drifting to the right and will continue becoming even more extremist. After the insurrection and all those lies, you may be wondering, how much more extreme can the Republican Party become? One person on Twitter asked, where can it go from here? All right, so where can it go from here? What it can do is drift toward more deeply into totalitarianism. I found this chart in a book by Yale political scientist Jacob Hacker and Berkeley political scientist Paul Pierson. The book is called Let Them Eat Tweets. This chart is from 2019 and is based on a systematic analysis of the campaign platforms of the leading parties. It shows that the Republican Party is now positioned to the right of mainstream conservatives. You can see there's still room to move further to the right. The extreme right and the extreme left on the political spectrum both lead to totalitarianism. This is when the individual is completely subsumed and believes and thinks only what he or she is told to believe. Totalitarianism, like fascism, is based on lies. In fascism, everyone gets in line and stays in line. Fascists like an identifying piece of clothing like a uniform. The Italians under Mussolini had brown shirts. The Ku Klux Klan had white sheets. MAGA hats, anyone? Totalitarianism takes this extreme ordering and compliance one step farther. In a totalitarian society, all people have the same beliefs and thoughts. They all accept the reality presented to them by the controlling authorities. Orwell explained that this is achieved through psychological manipulation. The individual is so overwhelmed that he or she no longer has the capacity for independent thought. The modern way to achieve this is through what's been called the fire hose of falsehoods, a propaganda technique that overwhelms the listener with lies and leaves them feeling that the truth is unknowable. Then, if Trump says he won the election, this becomes a fact. Kevin McCarthy, the Republican minority leader who is pushing to oust Cheney, said, I have heard from members concerned about her ability to carry out the job as conference chair and to carry out the message. Notice the phrase, the message. This is key. All must accept the same truth and repeat the same message. When the pandemic hit, remember, Trump had no interest in trying to control the virus. What he wanted to do was control the narrative. If everybody believed what Trump and his spokespeople said, if people believed that COVID was no worse than the flu, that people were actually dying of other causes, and that the numbers of deaths were being exaggerated, the pandemic would cease to be a problem. It would be wished out of existence. Trump could not then be faulted for an inadequate response to a pandemic if that pandemic didn't exist. It's kind of a variation of the standard question from college philosophy. If a tree falls in the woods but nobody heard it, did it make a sound? In a totalitarian regime, the question is, if a tree falls in the woods, but nobody believes it fell, did it really fall? If there's a pandemic, but nobody believes there's a pandemic, is there really a pandemic? If it's never in the history books, did it happen? If Trump lost the election, but enough people believe he won, did he really lose? You can either win an election or you can persuade everybody by some mind control method that you won. Trump's approach is to try to persuade everybody that he won. Now, in the totalitarianism that he envisions, whatever he says becomes reality. The shocking part is how many members of the Republican leadership are willing to go along with this. Now, this feels like a turning point for Liz Cheney because she personally reached a line she can't cross or won't cross. She reached her limit. In the past, she embraced lies. She flirted with totalitarianism, but she sees now where this is leading. She sees that Trump's lies can actually make free and fair elections in the United States a thing of the past. We've all really watched over the past few years as various Republicans reached their limits. Some Republicans jumped ship when Trump became the nominee. Others not until he became president. Each Republican who reaches his or her limit seems to go through something, as he or she has to come to terms in some way with where the party is going. Now, Liz Cheney campaigned for Trump in 2020, so she was fine with all Trump's lies during the 4 years he was in office. Surely she knew he was lying. The Washington Post documented more than 30,000 lies that Trump told during his 4 years in the White House. But Liz Cheney reached her limit with the insurrection, which she understood was sparked by the lie that Trump won the election. Cheney is also right that the way to stop the Republican slide toward totalitarianism is if enough Republicans denounce the lie. But this would require an open vote, not a secret ballot. If the vote is secret and a majority vote in her favor, and if they still don't have the nerve to say out loud that it was all a lie and take the heat for it, nothing will really change. The only thing that'll tell you is that a lot of Republican leaders are going along with Trump's lie, even though they know it's a lie and they know they should be following Cheney's example. But they aren't because they lack moral courage or they care more about power than truth. Now, there have been rumors for a while that a lot of the Republican leadership just wishes Trump would disappear. Maggie Haberman of the New York Times reported last month that just like when Donald Trump was candidate in 2016, Republicans are trying to avoid becoming the target of his attacks or directly confronting him while hoping someone else will. Former Republican strategist Stuart Stevens, in his book, It Was All a Lie, wrote last year that most Republican elected officials wish that one or the other 15 candidates who ran for president in 2016 were now in the White House. They love to whisper this to each other and to journalists off the record. In other words, they want Trump gone, but they're too cowardly to confront him. If you do the wrong thing because you're a coward instead of evil, you're still doing the wrong thing. Trump doesn't care why you go along with his lie. If you go along with his lie because you're deceived, or if you go along with his lie because you're too cowardly to confront him, whatever the reason, if enough people go along with the lie, it becomes the truth in this totalitarian way. Now, in my video a few Sundays ago, I talked about fascist lies and why somebody like Cheney might go along with the lies for so long, and why now so many members of the Republican leadership are going along even though they know their lies. Now, some of their victims don't know their lies. Some of the followers don't know their lies, but they do. They lie because they see the lies in service to a higher truth. They believe the lies serve some sort of higher purpose. Now, yesterday, the Post reported an incident that had Liz Cheney quite alarmed at the degree to which the Republican Party is disregarding facts. At a party retreat in April, she and others listened to a polling briefing. The staff from the National Republican Committee left out a key fact. They left out a finding of where Trump was weak. Cheney was alarmed that they were just leaving out this bad fact. In her view, you have to know what the bad facts are so you can deal with them. But leaving out bad facts makes perfect sense in a party moving toward totalitarianism, because in a totalitarian society, facts don't matter. They're irrelevant. Whether or not the tree falls in the woods doesn't matter. What matters is whether everybody believes that the tree fell or didn't fall in the woods. So now back to the vote. If the vote to oust Cheney is secret, and they do oust her, it doesn't tell us anything other than that a majority of Republicans fully embrace the lie and are willing to set aside the evidence of their eyes and ears and accept whatever Trump tells them is true. On the other hand, if the vote is not secret, it might be a watershed moment if enough Republican members of Congress have the courage to say aloud that the election was not stolen. Trump didn't win. If they do that, it gets harder for Trump to maintain the illusion. His power lessens, and it becomes harder for his successor to just pick up where he left off. It stops or slows the Republican slide toward totalitarianism. Now, the fourth possibility, that the vote is not secret and she is ousted, would tell us that the party is even further along the road than we thought. So, the one possibility that might be a watershed moment, the vote is open and they vote to keep her in power, is actually something I don't expect. It would be great, but the Republican leadership had their chance to keep the party from sliding further into extremism with 2 impeachments. So what do the rest of us do as the Republican Party slides further into totalitarianism? We hold on to the truth, even when people around us are resistant to the truth. We vote in every election, at every level. Between elections, we register new voters. Do what you can. Don't try to spend too much time trying to convert the true Trump believers. Work on mobilizing those who are still tethered to the truth and facts. Well, I've done one of these each Sunday now for the past few weeks, so I guess I'll be back next Sunday. If you have questions, let me know. I do try to read the comments, and I hope you'll join me. Grab your Sunday morning beverage, and I'll see you here next Sunday. Thank you.